Welcome to the Alembic. One of the biggest challenges we have in teaching and learning leadership is that while the prescriptions for what to do and how are easily formulated, the process of transformative internal change is not. While we have a good handle on the concept of emotional intelligence, the techniques to inculcate it inside out are still rather elusive. The ancient discipline of yoga, with its emphasis on growth and continuous improvement leading to success, holds some valuable lessons that we can apply to solve this riddle. This series, Yoga for Leaders, is dedicated to exploring how the practices, techniques, science, and philosophy of yoga cohere into a natural model for leadership that we can apply to improve ourselves, our experience, and the outcomes in our life. The purpose of yoga is aptly defined in the texts, and it says, when the practitioner wields the true power of yoga, strategy, growth, success, and fortune follow unfailingly. So the practice of yoga begins with an intent and a strategy. What do I want to achieve and why? And the model of learning is one of growth, as we shall soon see, which yields success when properly followed, which over time begins to appear like fortune. And that's the message. The objective of yoga is to achieve the goals in your life optimally. It's the experience that matters. The philosophy of yoga is founded on two pillars: knowledge and action. Knowledge without action creates no value. I can be the smartest person on earth and the most knowledgeable one, but it provides no value to me, the community, or humanity. On the other hand, action without knowledge can be dangerous, and very often is. Together, the two build an invincible basis for success. Let's see how that works. In this model, everything we do, every action of ours results in an outcome which we experience. If we live consciously and practice the techniques of yoga, we observe that experience and we learn from it. So we have the cognition of that experience. That cognition results in knowledge. We have learned something. It adds to our storehouse of knowledge. And thus, we are a little bit smarter progressively. With that knowledge, we perform further action. And this further action, as a result of better knowledge, if performed consciously, results in the experience of cognition, which means we now recognize that we are improving, we're doing something better because we've learned. So not only do we learn, but we are conscious of the learning experience, which means when we perform the next action, not only have we come from a better place of knowledge, but we are now observing the results of that improved knowledge, and then again after the action we observe the results of that. So this creates a continuous loop of learning and action which results in growth. And this growth then continuously improves our performance in everything we do. It makes our actions more effective, it makes our knowledge stronger, and thus results in continuing success. We are now able to better achieve our goals because we are better able to decide what they are and how to best achieve them. So this model of yoga is fundamentally about continuous growth so that you can meet your objectives optimally. Now let's look at some specific examples of how this works from the perspective of developing leadership. The journey begins with learning about my own self, my internal self, not the external one which everyone can see, but the one inside which most can't, and very often I myself don't. The action that I perform is living consciously, which means continuously observing what is it I do and what doing that does to me. For instance, my eating habits, my movement, what I do all day, how I sit, how I stand, what I eat and how and when, and what that does to me. Just being conscious of everything that physically happens to you during the day is the action to be performed, which then results in the experience, which is a knowledgeable experience, which is a knowledge forming experience. And then that adds to my knowledge of how I work, and thus I can now begin to regulate and manage my own physical health. And the general outcome of this cycle is health and energy. Practitioners of yoga soon find that they have more energy in their life, more vigor. You don't get tired as much, and losing sick time. Illnesses and general sickness pretty much vanishes. And so health brings not just health in your physical body, but health in your work and your performance. The next example is knowledge of my mental emotional state. That is my mental emotional state in the moment. How am I feeling? What am I thinking? Why am I thinking? How is what I'm thinking affecting how I am feeling? How is what I'm feeling affecting how I'm thinking, how I'm making decisions? Most of the time we are totally unaware of that. The practices of yoga teach us how to monitor that. Once I start monitoring that, the action I perform is to deliberate my behavior, which means I stop living reflexively. Before every action, before doing anything, before making any decision, I deliberate upon it based on the learning I have of how I react to things. And thus, performing that action with the cognition of experience helps me understand myself better, because this is the experimentation that goes on. If I did this, this happens. If this happens, this is how I react. And this forms a continuous improvement cycle of where I can continually improve how I behave. I become more effective and I'm more cognizant of how I'm feeling, and therefore I compensate in any circumstance that I'm in so that the interactions I have are productive. And that's the outcome from this cycle, productive interactions. I'm able to work with all kinds of people in all kinds of circumstances and achieve positive results, because I am now regulating not just my behavior, but even my thinking, and very often my feeling. The next example is of learning and understanding what drives my mental emotional state in any given situation. So this is about learning what my programmed reflexes are. What are the neuronal schemas that are programmed into my mind? And how are they affecting my thinking, my feeling, and my behavior under any circumstances. The action that I perform is, according to the practice of yoga, objective thinking. So when I'm thinking, I am observant of what I am thinking and why. This knowledge of the drivers of my mental emotional state I now apply to regulate and actually manage my mental emotional state in the moment. So when I have to make a decision, I think objectively. I look at, I know what factors, what triggers might be affecting, coloring my judgment in any circumstance. And this is not just when I'm interacting with others. This is thinking for myself. This is when I'm making plans and I'm thinking, oh, that's something I could never do. Is that true? With the understanding that I develop by going through this cycle over and over again, I begin to question that thought. And I begin to say, what in my makeup is driving that door that I've closed for myself? And as I keep practicing that learning and action cycle, I begin to see reasons why that door could be opened. And I begin to find answers and solutions to things that I may never have thought possible, because I'm practicing the principles of self-learning and growth, which is the fundamental practice of yoga. What this results in is clarity, which means when I'm trying to understand any situation, whether it's a problem or it's a situation with people, or it's a challenge or a complex issue that I'm working on, understanding what drives my thinking gives me clarity, which means when I look at that picture, I can remove things. I can remove stuff that's redacted, stuff that wasn't visible to me because of how I thought, how I looked at things. And so I get more clarity. I see things more clearly. I can also focus better. So my concentration improves, because when I put myself to a task, my mind can now be focused because I know what my distractions are. I know what bothers me when I start thinking about something. And now with that knowledge, I can perform the action of identifying and removing those distractions from my thinking process, which results in focus and concentration. And the more I do it, the better I become at it, and the faster it comes to me, which results in enhanced cognition. Which means when I'm looking at a problem, I can understand it faster, and I can literally drive my brain faster. Let's just think about this. Most of us use 1 or 2% of the power of our brain, just because most of the rest is consumed with meaningless things that are not pertinent to the issue at hand of what I really want to focus on. If I'm able to remove just 2% of that fluff, 2% of that noise, my performance doubles, a 100% increase in my cognition. That is how powerful this methodology is. And it's very simple. It's just learning about myself so I can apply that learning in the actions that I perform. Let's look at another example. Cognitive filters. These are things that keep me from doing things or force me to do things without thinking. My brain has programmed these neuronal subschemas which help me make quick decisions. It's great in that I don't waste a lot of time and I'm able to do a lot of things without much thinking. I can drive, I can eat, and I can generally live my life. However, the downside is I begin to do almost everything without objectively and deliberately thinking. As a result of which, my actions don't always result in positive outcomes, positive, healthy, productive interactions with people. So, in this case, the knowledge that I seek to obtain is what are the filters in my mind, what are the things that hold me back, what are the things that I'm afraid of, so afraid of that I don't even reveal them to myself. And the action is true listening. Because I know what my filters are when I'm interacting with others, I can now remove the distractions, I can remove the questions that are forming, the noise that's being created while I'm trying to understand something, listen to someone without getting my own thoughts and feelings and emotions triggering extraneous thoughts. I can listen better. And that means I can understand other people better and faster and get to the point. It also leads to intrepid thinking, because things that I may have been afraid to think of, I can now begin to think of. I can begin to open doors that I had closed, and I had closed them so shut that I didn't even know that those doors existed. Those doors begin to appear, and I begin to open them, and my thinking becomes more intrepid, because I realize that while I may not be able to do some things, I can still think about them. And if I can think about them, I can learn how to do them, and I can begin opening doors in my life. So the outcomes that we see through this cycle is nimble and insightful decisions. Because now when I make a decision, the smallest decision of something like should I eat now or should I wait for a half hour, to the largest, most complex decisions about a project, about big things in life, the cycle is the same. The model is the same. And that is understanding and identifying what holds me back, what are my cognitive filters that make me do the same thing again and again, that hides things from me. And then I can remove those, and I begin to see what over time seem to be wise decisions being taken naturally. And let's take one more example, especially from the perspective of leadership. The knowledge that we seek to attain is cognitive empathy. What does that mean? Empathy and sympathy are two words that are often confused. Sympathy means that I have the same feeling as another person. So if another person is angry or hurt, I become angry or hurt, which means the triggers that the other person has turned on and is reacting to, I might turn on for myself and start reacting to, which means I am not able to help another person. Just as when I'm on an airplane, they tell me that if air pressure falls in an unlikely situation, the airbag will drop, and that if I have someone who needs help traveling with me, I need to first help myself and then the other person. Sympathy would mean that both of us are out of luck. So empathy, cognitive empathy, is when I understand the feeling the other person is having, but I am not experiencing that feeling. Cognitive empathy. Why that's important is if I'm trying to help someone, if I'm trying to coach someone, influence someone to do something a certain way, I need to understand where they are, where they are coming from. But I can only do that if I am not in the same place as them. I need to be on firmer ground. So I need cognitive empathy. And thus, the action I perform is metacognitive coaching. Metacognitive coaching focuses on how the person thinks, how the person is thinking in this moment because the result of their cognitive filters and their mental emotional state, and helping them change that so they can overcome whatever barriers, whatever challenges, whatever fears they might have, without delving into the specifics of why that's happening. So metacognitive coaching focuses on the process of thinking, my own thinking and the other person's thinking. So as a metacognitive coach, you can help other people solve their problems without looking at or trying to understand what their problems are, because the solution is not in the problem. The solution is in how I am or the other person is perceiving the problem and how they are keeping themselves from solving it. The result of this as a leader is influence. You are better, quicker, and more effectively able to help other people do what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, why it needs to be done, and motivate them. This turns into a force multiplier because you can now have 5 people doing what you're doing yourself. And then those 5 people can be turning this to 25 people. It is the process which is always the same. The methodology is always the same. And thus, it is a repeatable process that anyone who understands and trains themselves through the process we just talked about, using principles that have been applied and practiced for thousands of years. And that is what this integrated model of yoga can help us achieve. The most important lesson that I believe I have learned from yoga is embodied in this pithy aphorism: yoga is skill in action, knowing what to do, why to do it, and the best way to do it, and then doing it with resolute, deliberate action is yoga. The discipline of yoga provides tools, techniques, and principles to achieve the outcomes that we just discussed, which are essential for effective leadership. In the upcoming episodes, we will discuss the true meaning of yoga, its emphasis on productivity, further explore the purpose of yoga and the process of growth that we experience by applying these principles, identify specific behaviors that exemplify yogi leadership, and discuss how to learn, develop, and inculcate those behaviors. As my favorite yoga teacher says, it will be done if you do it.